Modern day BMWs have changed their looks in such a drastic way that a lot of people ask the question, are in fact BMWs ugly? Which ones are ugly? Which ones aren't so ugly? Which ones would I even consider buying? Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
So the first one on my list, look right here. Well, what do we parked right behind me here? This is clearly one of the more controversial models in recent days for BMW.
Oh, and there's the new M3. Look at the big grills. Yeah, they got all the McCheesemo grill action. They do look sporty and wide from the front end. Pretty intense, but actually look at it. It's got that new style front emblem and of course the laser LEDs with all that blue element. All they do is blind oncoming traffic and send people into a fiery crash. You do have laser wheels and of course some weird rocker panels. Look around the back and you'll notice LEDs that look like a boomerang. I'm not sure, are these Australian cars? But there it is, again, the revised BMW logo. Oh, big, bold grills at the back. The splitter's aggressive. Quad pipes, enough to blow enough farts out of the backside. It's a sharp car from the back end though, for sure. And then look down the side. It looks very beefy, definitely stout. Big flares, it looks like an M car nonetheless. And then the interior, all of that wonderful leather. Smells so delicious and juicy, and it has the latest M-Drive system, so that's a very attractive setup as well. This front quarter view just makes it look magnifico. But it's still, I just can't quite get over those big nostril grills. That's what you're dealing with when you look at the front end of this car. BMW kind of missed the mark. But because these cars come with a manual or an automatic 8-speed, which is delicious, just because of performance attributes, this is probably one of those cars I would buy. I literally would, because it looks pretty good. Other than that disgusting schnoz, it actually looks amazing. And it goes fast too. And it's one of the few BMWs that's really dialed in to be supercar fast.
And here's one that literally hits the ugly radar. Right here, it got smashed by every ugly branch on the ugly tree as it sailed down the road.
And here we have the glorious iX. This looks almost like a hearse. And what do we have? The 50i version. Of course, this is the bigger, higher output version. And honestly, it's just horrific from the back end. Look at that whole piece there. It's all round and weird and just strange, trying to be all futuristic, trying to compete with Tesla. Look at those weird taillights. Slanted, sloppy, skinny. And of course, there is the iX badge. Everything's in bronze on this car, as you can see, which I kind of like that, the way that's turned around. But look at these little rear diffusers at the bottom. Not sure what they're there for. I think it's just really more cosmetic. So I think it just looks more like a pimple on the back seat of a Rhino. And there's some weird flares. Flares I normally like, but on this vehicle, not sure. There's your iX logo, and it sort of looks like an i3. Cheesy wheels, trying to follow the theme. Oh, there's more motif with the little greasy handles. And of course, we have a funny little mirror that pops out at you and goes, boo! And oh, look at those headlights, gross. Oh, that grill. Oh, that's gross. And then looking inside, what they're doing now is clearly something they're chasing Mercedes. And obviously, we've seen modern day Mercedes now, they're putting a big screen on there. And that's what they're doing. Just trying to be one big giant iPad screen across half of the dashboard, pillar to pillar. And then on top, we have all his glass. That's just wonderful. I just can't get enough. Take a step back and look at all that royal ugliness. Again, it's like a hearse. I just can't help but the vomit. It's almost like a bad car accident. Looking at it as you drive by, you can't help but look, right? And there's some more flair. Well, mixed. Rocker panels, kind of minor. We have a bit of a clamshell hood, which is kind of interesting. And some tinted window, which is good because you want to be hidden. You don't want anybody to see you when you drive in this ugliness. But there it is, more bronze and more ugly. Can't say I'd ever buy one of these.
Another is the modern day 4 Series BMW. As you look right here, yeah, they have conventional headlights and the front nose on them looks fairly sporty, in fact. But I do feel that the whole side looks very generic and disconnected. The front end looks classic BMW, but then the sides look a little bit strange and awkward with this flare. It doesn't quite match with the front end of the vehicle. It does look a little bit different. Yeah, it has little vents and rear splitters that look very interesting, including their dual exhaust tips. Of course, you can get the xDrive system, which is all-wheel drive, and this is a 430, which is the 4-cylinder. But I'm personally not a huge fan of this new 4 Series BMWs. The Coupe just doesn't look very well connected, and I personally think they're a little bit on the ugly side. In fact, they just don't have the look. They lack the look that the original M Series cars had, the M4s, and the 4 Series from generations before it. Just had some style. This one feels a little bit watered down, milk-like, vanilla yogurt. Yeah, it has that big bucktooth grille on it, not also loved very much, so that is clearly not a thing of beauty. But instead of this ugliness, I would try something else, like this instead. This is the outgoing M4, and as you can see, this is also a coupe, but it looks much, much better connected. You do have the flares on the front and the sides. As you go down the back, the flares pop out here, and they're very prominent. It looks aggressive, but the car flows better. It looks like it's more carved out of one piece. Of course, you also have the quad exhaust tips on this generation of the M4, and of course, they also have the LED taillights, so they're not that old school. And yes, carbon fiber roof makes it look sharp. Beautiful laser cut style wheels on this M4, and the interior is gorgeous with deep bolstered seats, and you can get this in a manual gearbox too. They also have these amazing mirrors on there with that slight disconnect on the top, and they just have that more conventional BMW look, which most people would like on that kidney grille. Of course, they do have LED lights and a very stylish type spoiler. So if you want to have a BMW coupe that's a 3 or a 4 Series, I would definitely go the older generation. And here is one of the ugliest BMWs in the current lineups. What we're talking about is a crossover SAV, sport activity vehicle. It's not full-on SUV, it's sort of that crossover chopped down version. What we're talking about here is an X6. Of course, this is an older version. We have the standard older style headlights and traditional grille on the front. Of course, a lot of people like these, but personally, I find using these, you end up smashing your head on the roof here, and even this back end here looks disconnected. Look down here as well, and I noticed the current generation looks like the wheelbase is too short and the vehicle's too high, and it just looks a little bit weird and broken. But if you have to have a crossover, there's a couple of other choices. For example, one being what we have right here. This is the BMW X40, and that's the M40. That means it's got the B58, and it's the turbo 6-cylinder engine, one of the more reliable drivetrains in recent history by this BMW. Of course, you've got dual exhaust tips, and of course, you've got the flares along the side. You'll notice those great designs. And of course, down here, you got a little more flair and accentuation on the door panels, M-decals, other little details like that. Of course, sunroof on the roof, and of course more of a traditional style of front end on these vehicles. You'll notice a little flare on the front, traditional mirrors, and one-touch access to get in. The interior is pretty conventional BMW as well. But personally, I think these are relatively ugly, and it's all about proportions. They sit too high, the wheelbase is too short, and they just look really gross. Instead of that, I personally like the looks of the X2 right here, which is the smallest version, and based on the X1 SUV, this is the SAV, the X2. Now this has the smaller drivetrain, smaller 4-cylinder engine drivetrains, not as powerful, much more interesting car to drive around in than the X4, and the beauty is this I personally think looks much sportier. It also is lower, just has an overall nicer presence and a stance to it, has some great detail around the back. Of course, you got these great LED taillights, and you've got a settled dual exhaust tips on here. This one's the X-Drive all-wheel drive 28i, and a great look all the way down the sides with the great mirrors, sunroofs on top, and the traditional style LED headlights that you'd find in most modern BMWs, laser cut wheels. It's definitely more conventional BMW, and it has that kidney style grille. So it's a much more attractive SUV or SAV than what we have over here in the X4 with the M40i. Now the advantage the M40i has, of course, this vehicle you can actually get that B58, the Turbo 6, which unfortunately you can't get that over in the X2.
And here we have the X7. It's all its girthness. This thing's massive. It has its own orbit. It's ginormous. Look at those handles. They're built for King Kong Bundy. And look at all that. Yeah, you can put your trashy project on the roof, and yeah, you have these funky taillights. Looks pretty slick. This is the 40i, so it has that B58, so it's at least got a good engine going for it. But this thing's just so damn big. Yeah, it's got these massive wheels. It's gonna be super expensive to fix. And then looking at this, it looks like a giant work boot. Yuck. So yeah, they put enough chrome and detail on there to sort of make it interesting. It's not sort of technically murdered out, but it is a different kind of a look. Yeah, it's ginormous. They're trying to compete with the Escapades of the world and the QX80s, 90s, whatever those Infinity Beasts of burden, but it's not the greatest looking vehicle. And circling around to the front of these things, look at this thing. Oh, the headlights aren't bad. I mean, that looks kind of cool. But those grills are gross, oversized, ginormous. It looks like an old Dodge pickup truck from way back, and what a horrendous beast of burden. And not only that, think about what the taxation, it'll be like 60-70% of your income will be taxed. That's what it'll feel like owning one of these for the long term. And here is an example of a car that I truly believe is one of the best looking BMWs, and I would probably own one of these. And look, you'll notice it has this gorgeous tailpipe system here with carbon fiber. It's a 340. That's right, it has that wonderful, illustrious B58 engine, which is somewhat reliable. Laser cut wheels, has gorgeous color. You know, all the details are, you know, subtle, but definitely effective. You have a sunroof and all kinds of that greatness at the front end. Yeah, the infamous headlights with the angel eyes, and of course that grille that we all recognize, and it's got a little more front splitter there, makes it look very attractive. It's a gorgeous car. The profile of it, it just looks as a BMW should look. Not to mention reliability is sort of embedded and immersed in these vehicles to a point because of that B58 engine. It's a beauty. It's one of those worth keeping. But yes, I mean, to find one of these laying around is hard to come by these days, especially with lower miles, because they're one of BMW's best. And look at this next monstrosity. Clearly not a vehicle that anybody wants to own. Oh, look at that ugly thing. Oh, yes, what we're looking at is a 335. This one here is a 335 GT. That's right, Gran Turismo, or gutless transmission? I don't know. Whatever it is, it's rough looking. Sure, as you scope to the front, it looks a little more conventional. Yeah, it has the more normal angel eye front end on it with the kidney grills. It looks all fun and fresh and frivolous. But until you have to look around the back, I mean, look down the side, looks cool, but that back end is a mess. And the next one right here is the 745 from an era that just makes... this is the Bangle butt era. So Chris Bangle ass. Yeah, look at the side proportions. Those taillights, how they conform, and those the rear quarter, how it all ties into the rear taillights, and it's just gross. Vomit. Now, a lot of people hated the Bangle butt era. I mean, the E60 M5 was one, but I think the E60 M5 was a great looking car. I think the 7 Series car looked gross. As we're looking here, yeah, you have a little bit of that cheap chrome along the bottom, peel away, stick away chrome. And you've got those little reflectors that try to blend in with the taillights, but they're just nasty. Then you scroll along the side, and it's a pretty generic, long-winded car with some alloys that are undersized, headlights that are just kind of gross and old school, for being honest. Not a car you want, because the maintenance will crush you into oblivion as well. This is one of their most unreliable engines and cars you could ever dream of. There's a lot of controversy around these cars. Clearly an ugly behemoth with the Bangle ass era. The 745 Li you don't want. What I do think looks particularly attractive if you like SUVs, what we have here is a gorgeous vehicle. We get the laser LEDs, laser cut wheels, and sunroof on top. It has a very pronounced looking rear flare assembly, and I love those LED taillights. Big, bold, and you've got that back end finish. Just looks gorgeous, and this is an X3, but it's the M40i, and it actually features the B58 engine, which is one of their workhorses, most powerful, most tunable, and this vehicle actually looks quite stealthy. Very reliable, very attractive, and definitely one that I would consider. If I was looking for a small to mid-size SUV, this vehicle has packed it all, other than it's a little bit pricey. And the next great choice, if you want a larger to full-size SUV wrapped in this amazing purple here by BMW, look at the beautiful headlights. You've got those laser LEDs, the big bold grille, it's brass or copper, whatever, gorgeous laser cut rims, and of course that big grille tells you there's something special there. High gloss everywhere, little door handles that are kind of simple, rocker panels, flares that are all painted and matched, and I love those LED taillights. How about, oh, there it is, X5M Competiciones, and look at that high gloss bottom end. This ass is dragging on its ground with those quad pipes, and look, bed bug infested mattress, you can haul it easily with that roof rack. Absolutely gorgeous, and all that sunroof action gives you light into the cabin for those happy little people in your life. So this is clearly one of the most gorgeous SUVs on the market, and if you need to have one, this is probably your bet. The X5M Competition, performance looks to match, gorgeous. And here's the next one. This is high on my bucket list for cars that are definitely worth owning. What do we have? An M6. But if you look at it, it's something peculiar. There's 4 doors. And what does 4 doors usually mean? It's a coupe, but this is a Grand Coupe because it's 4 doors, it's a little bit different. But it does have a carbon roof and I love it. How about as well the front end? And you see it's got those cutesy little front lights like that and a beautiful grille, as well as those deep dish rims. Love the deep dish wheels. And of course it's got the M badging on the side, tells you it is something. It's mucho special. One-touch handles, a little bit of chrome detail on there. It's gorgeous. Look at the hips on that bad boy. That is aggressive. Okay, the taillights are moderate, old school, but you do have a set of dual pipes and another set of dual pipes right there. And the interior is pretty cool too. Old school, but it works. Conventional and well wearing. It's a great car. This is one of my faves, the M6 Grand Coupe. Looks great.
And with all of that said, check it out right there. The most reliable modern day luxury cars. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.